Hello, welcome to Lex Orandi Lex Credendi. I am Kenny, and I'm going live today since it is now Holy Week, and I know that I have been a bit of a downer in recent videos due to some of my disappointments, and dealing with that, trying to figure out exactly what I'm doing, but now we're in Holy Week, a few days in at this point. Specifically, we're at Holy Wednesday, aka Spy Wednesday. And so I'm going into Holy Week with a renewed sense of faith. I was very disappointed over the last couple of weeks. And after watching The Mass of the Ages, actually, I watched it a few times. It did choke me up at a couple of points, and it gave me a renewed sense of hope for the future of the church, even though our situation here just really, really sucks. I am, I'm just happy to see that this movement for tradition and the Holy Latin Mass is, in fact, growing. And I mean, I don't know. It just seems that tradition, although is growing, but it is growing rather slowly, at least in areas like mine. And most of that is the fault of the bishops, of course, because they are the ones that are preventing it from happening. The Society of St. Pius X, of course, is limited on resources, so they can't ordain as many priests as they would probably like. And they don't have enough buildings to put them in or funds to take care of them. Personally, I would be more than willing to figure out how to come up with enough money to come up with a building and, supply the priest with whatever he needs and all of that if they would just send one here. But unfortunately, that's easier said than done, and they probably wouldn't. They probably wouldn't listen to somebody like me because I'm just one guy, and that of course has been the source of a lot of my disappointment. Is that I've put all this work into trying to get tradition moving here, conversations with people, and I've had a fairly good amount of positive feedback from people. But like I had pointed out before, people just don't want to stick their neck out. But that is a concern that I am now putting on the back burner, at least for a while, since we are about to enter into the Triduum tomorrow. And so, armed with my Father Lassant's Missal, my rosary, and my faith, I will suck it up, go to my local Novus Ordo, pray the prayers that are in the Missal, and do whatever I need to do in order to sustain my faith. And hopefully by next year, next Easter, or hell, by Christmas, I will hopefully be in a position where I can travel to either Mater Dei, which is about 2 hours from me, and or St. Benedict's, which is a little bit closer. And then, of course, there's the Society of St. Pius X chapel, but it's a really small chapel, and I don't know if I want to risk trying to go there and not being able to get in, or going too early, or the problem that I had mentioned before is that they just don't have the funds for all the priests that they're going to ordain. Because I have heard that they actually have a lot of people that want to get ordained there, but can't support them all. So I don't know if that means that the Society Chapel would, not have the Triduum at one or more of their chapels. Of course, there's another one, I can't remember. I think it's St. Michael's in Fort Worth, I think. But ultimately, tradition is not just the Latin Mass. And I mean, I've known this, but with the Eucharist, the sacrifice of the Mass being the source and summit of our faith, it is highly important. It is the sacrifice of Calvary. And so, although it saddens me that I was not able to procure a way to make it to the Latin Mass for the Triduum this year, I do intend to go in the spirit of tradition to the Novus Ordo and pray that the Mass is valid. Because and I do need to check this, and I'll have to find some excuse to be in there to check the sacristy. Because one of the times that I went in there to go talk to our priest, I did notice, and of course at the time I didn't know any better. I didn't think it mattered, but of course now I do know it matters. But I had noticed that the parish here was just, they had like the box wine in the sacristy. And the only reason that would be in the sacristy, it's not like Father's got a box in there so he can have a glass while he's preparing for Mass. That is the wine that they're using at the Mass. And if that is the case, I need to go and check, because it's Walmart wine. So chances are it is not, untainted wine. And so there's a very high possibility that all this time I've been, air quotes, receiving the Eucharist, and none of it has been valid. And then, of course, Father's got a gluten issue, so he does have some gluten-free hosts, which I'm not positive on that. What I've been told is basically the whole host is gluten-free except for like a tiny speck, like right smack in the middle of it. But I know people within my family that have the gluten problem, and just one speck of gluten is enough to like lay them out for the next couple of days. Like, it kills them. And so, that also being the case, um, I've started to have some very serious reservations. Like, I do believe that the Novus Ordo, if they have valid matter, is a valid mass. But as I have started to discover, there's a very high possibility they're not even using valid matter in the first place. And so that would mean that all the Novus Ordos, even if hypothetically they were they were valid as they are with valid matter, then uh, you know, if they're not using valid matter, then that just kills the whole thing. Like, you can't go to a Novus Ordo if they've got invalid matter and think that it's a valid mass. And so, unfortunately, that is the situation up to this point. But I am going to go to the Triduum at my local Novus Ordo, unfortunately, uh, and I'm going to go with this renewed spirit of hope for the way the church is going. And anybody else who may be in the same position as me, uh, just have hope. Do the best you can. Start learning to uh, practice the faith, live the missal. Get you follow the signs, live the liturgical year. I messed that up when I first said it, and because if you can't get to a Latin Mass, this is the best way to do it. Live the liturgical year. Do the best you can in your own home. Make your life a beacon of Catholic tradition, even when everybody else around you is not. You individually need to be that beacon of hope. I know that sometimes I am not, because I get really frustrated when I try to follow tradition and everywhere I turn, I am prevented from doing so. And so, uh, starting tomorrow, we of course enter Holy Thursday. And that, of course, is going to be the beginning of Christ's betrayal, and then eventual crucifixion, and then resurrection. And we need to go into this, especially for those who are stuck in the Novus Ordo. We need to go into this with a renewed sense of hope, with a sense of faith that God is not going to allow the Protestantism that tends to occur uh, within these Novus Ordos. As a matter of fact, the whole Novus Ordo Mass, the whole Novus Ordo theology, because the theology is just completely different. He's not going to allow this forever. He's not going to tolerate it forever. Just like, it's been said that if God doesn't punish us, the United States, for its abortion laws, for its sodomite laws, then God owes Sodom and Gomorrah an apology. And I think that goes the same for sacrilegious theology and masses. And when you water down the mass, you dumb it down, you are Protestantizing it. And Protestantization is sacrilege. It may be a valid mass, but, you know, when you've got, you know, bad theology surrounding the Eucharist, it's going to be offensive to God. And so that's not going to, it's just not going to last forever. Now, okay, it looks like we have a comment here from Katie. Okay, I couldn't read it there for a sec. She says, we all get frustrated, and Jesus knows. That is very, very true. Especially when you're stuck in this kind of a situation. Now, for those of you who can get to a Latin Mass or you have the ability to travel to one, I mean, I envy your position. But the way I figure it, there's a reason why I'm here. I do not know what that is. But the only thing I can figure, and this is not me having a high-minded thought of myself, but I do think that I'm here to try to inspire tradition, possibly, because there are a few people here in town that are traditionally minded and do think that we need to go back to the Latin Mass, but unfortunately they all work for the local parish here. And or they just think that we should go back to tradition, but they're lukewarm in their faith and they don't really practice. And therein lies the problem. But the hopeful thing is that more and more people are starting to get that way, where they're at least admitting that we need to go back to tradition, that we have turned down a wrong direction. And and I think as long as we keep building up these numbers, we will eventually get to a point where we can go to Bishop Olson or go to the society. I mean, depending on what happens over the next year. I mean, I don't know how long the Holy Father is going to last, or if he's going to, you know, pull a King Henry and get like super crazy towards the end of his life and start like demolishing everything. And so we may have to go the Society St. Pius X route. I mean, pretty much any Latin Mass would be fine with me. I really don't care who says it. Society, FSSP, Institute, SSPV, I really don't care. If they are promoting tradition, if they are keeping the true Catholic faith and they are promoting it, then as far as I'm concerned, they're my ally. Anybody who goes against that, in my view, is an enemy of Christ. And whether they realize it or not. Now, I do understand, because obviously I'm one of them, because even though I am a traditional Catholic, I do actually go to the Novus Ordo on a regular basis simply because I have no other choice. And so I do realize that not everybody that goes to the Novus Ordo is necessarily the enemy. And some, they're not the enemy just simply because they're ignorant. But there are a lot of people who, I guess you could say the boomer generation. Now, of course, I realize that not all boomers are like this. There are exceptions to the rule. But, the boomer generation are the ones that just will not let go of the Novus Ordo. They just see it as like, you know, the best thing that has ever occurred. It's a weird, like, hippie thing, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me why they're so attached to that. But then again, they also say the same thing about us. They don't understand why we're so attached to the Latin Mass. It's like, well, there's theological reasons why we're attached to it. It's not because we necessarily, I mean, obviously most of us do, but not necessarily because we like the Latin Mass better. The theological reasons is that it's more reverent and it's more appropriate for the worship of God, whereas the Novus Ordo is more about entertainment. You're constantly trying to be entertained at the Novus Ordo. And then people are talking about what they got out of it. And it's like, that's not the point. But anyway, I'm veering off topic here. But yeah, so we do have to be hopeful, even especially those who are stuck in a Novus Ordo setting. And so that's what I'm going into this Triduum with, is this renewed sense of hope that not only my situation, but every Catholic situation will gravitate towards the Latin Mass, towards better Catholic faith, towards a pure love of Christ, which can only be found in the traditions of the Catholic Church. So I will definitely be offering up more prayers for our Bishop Michael Olson, definitely for Francis. So I will be praying for all of them extra hard during this Triduum, that their eyes will be open to the fact that tradition is the only thing that works. That the Novus Ordo is just simply killing off its population. Increasingly aging communities. And maybe if you can get them to see that, and then to see the devotion of those who go to the traditional Latin Mass, or who want to go to the traditional Latin Mass, then perhaps they will see that, that's the direction we need to go. So anybody who, even if you're not in our diocese, if you're in the Diocese of Fort Worth, pray for the changing of Bishop Olson's mind specifically, because technically, no matter what Francis does, if Bishop Olson is going to be the one that ultimately ends up deciding whether we keep the Latin Mass, get rid of the Latin Mass, or ever have a Latin Mass. So, because it's his job to look after the faith of his flock. And if the Holy Father is doing things which harm his flock, it's his job to just look at him and be like, no, we're not doing that. This is what we're doing. So please pray for him. Pray for his mind to be enlightened to tradition, to the beauty of tradition, to everything that tradition brings to the table. And then, of course, for the health and conversion of our Holy Father, Pope Francis. Now, that one is a bit more of a doozy simply because he seems to be very against Catholic tradition. And he does not show any signs of changing his mind. Whether that is out of like some ignorance on his part or ideological problems with him, I don't know what it is. But he is our Holy Father, and we do need to pray for his conversion, especially since he's coming towards the end of his life. We don't know. He could be dead this year. He could be dead 5 years from now. So we really need to be hammering hard at not just praying for him in general, because everybody's praying for him. But people need to start being a bit more specific about how they pray for him. They need to pray for his conversion of his faith towards tradition, rather than just this generic Protestantized false ecumenism Catholicism that he seems to like. So I don't know. We will see what happens in the near future. But with all of that being said, keep the Catholic faith. Make sure you pray the rosary. And I say it every time I do one of these videos. Pray all 15 decades of the rosary if you can. Obviously, I understand that not everybody can do that. Not everybody has the ability time-wise, or some people just haven't got their prayer life up enough for that. And I understand that. I'm hit and miss on that. I try to pray all 15 every day, but I don't always make it. But do what you can. Pray at least 5 decades, minimum, daily. Get yourself a brown scapular. Do the first Fridays, first Saturdays. And then, keep up with Our Lady's requests for penance. And I don't usually do this one just because there's already like several people saying this on every single one of their videos, but pray for the consecration of Russia if the last one was not the real one. I'm still, I'm leaving that one up for debate right now, but I'm not convinced that it was legit, but I'm also not convinced that it wasn't. So if anybody, well, I see got at least one person on here. Well, it says two because I've got my other phone over here watching. So whoever's watching, if you got any questions, go for it. Otherwise, I'm going to get off here in a minute. But all right, well, it looks like that's all I have to say for the moment. Have a good remainder of Holy Week. Keep up whatever it is you decided to do for Lent. If you're stuck in the Novus Ordo, bring your Latin Missal, do the prayers in there, do the best you can. Hold on to hope, hold on to faith, and make sure that even if the Catholic world around you in your particular area is not where it should be, make sure you are. Because at the end of the day, the Catholic next to you is not going to be the standard by which you are judged. You are going to be judged on the basis of your own soul. So take care of your soul, take care of any souls that are under your care, under your charge, and just keep the faith. Until next time, Deus Vult.